Here.
Padilla here. Fuller. Here. Fuller here. Berryhill. Here. Berryhill here. Corbett. Here. Corbett here. De Leon. Desaunier. Pavley. Rubio. Simidian. Strickland.
Here.
Strickland here. Wright.
Here.
Wright here.
Quorum is established. We do have 10 items on today's agenda, 2 of which are proposed consent, those being items number 9 and 10. A motion would be in order.
So moved.
We have a motion on the consent items. If there's no objection, let's call the roll on the consent calendar.
Padilla.
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Fuller.
Aye.
Fuller, aye. Berryhill.
Aye.
Berryhill, aye. Corbett.
Aye.
Corbett, aye. De Leon. Desaunier. Pavley. Rubio. Simidian. Strickland.
Aye.
Strickland, aye. Wright.
Aye.
Wright, aye.
Okay. We'll leave those on call, allow absent members to add on when they arrive. Also want to announce that item number 7, SB 771 by Senator Kehoe, has been withdrawn from today's agenda. We look forward to considering that at the next bill hearing. Bringing us back to item number 1, which is mine. I'll go at the end. Item number 2, Senator Simidian, who's not here. Item number 3, Senator Corbett. Member of the committee, Senator Yee. Item number 4, SB 216. Please come forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Senators. Let me, before I get into the bill, let me take as amendments that are technical in nature, just to clean up the language of the bill, and then I think on a substantive basis on the VAL location that we will be taking amendments whereby conditions, if the conditions are not met and cannot be complied with in the law set out in this particular bill, that we allow the utility companies to develop the VAL location plans for review and approval by the PUC. So with that, on a horrible day back in 2010, there was a gas explosion in San Bruno in my district, and one of the realities of that particular explosion was that while individuals, authorities had identified the cause of this particular explosion, the eruption of a pipe and the leaking gas, there was no way of, in a quick and efficient way, to shut off the gas. What this bill will do is to then establish a requirement for either an automatic or remotely controlled valve on all pipelines that cross seismic active earthquake fault or located within high consequence or high populated area. It's the same standard that is currently in federal regulations, but only for manual shutoffs. And so hopefully this will improve the safety of overall pipelines in the state of California. And with that urge and I vote, I have Barry Broadcall, who is with the Red Cross.
Mr. Chairman and members, Barry Broadcall on behalf of the American Red Cross. Just to say that we support this bill strongly and to point out the enduring nature of these type of disasters. Just last week, the Red Cross opened its San Bruno Resource and Recovery Center to continue with the service to the families who have been affected by the disaster. Just last week. This is an ongoing effort. We've been servicing over 300 families with a variety of mental health services. We have client caseworkers, we have disaster health workers, and the mental health workers who continue to work with the families involved. So we think there's an alternative to these types of disasters. We can, if we can move toward the policy that's indicated in Mr. Yee's bill, we think we can resolve some of these issues without having the serious disasters that have ensued. So we support the bill strongly and urge your support.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. Steve Cruz with Political Solutions on behalf of the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, here in strong support of the bill. As you know, the blast occurred in the city of San Bruno and the county of San Mateo, and the pipeline, as Mr. Senator Yee stated, was equipped with only a manual shutoff valve, and because of that, the fire lasted for hours and caused tremendous damage. Specifically, the blast caused about $55 million in damage to vehicles and homes in San Mateo County and $15 million in public infrastructure damage, and resulted in 8 fatalities. And while the legislation and the changes proposed won't help the victims of the blast itself, they will prevent such disasters from occurring in the future. And for that reason, we urge your support of this measure.
Thank you for being here. Before I call up additional support, let me just remind our colleagues here, we have the item before us. Senator Yee has agreed to take as author's amendments those suggested under comments number 1 and under comment number 2 in the analysis. Other members here in support?
Yes, hello, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Afrak Vargas. I represent over 24,000 firefighters and first responders, and we are, of course, the first line of defense to incidents like this, as we were for this one, and we would respectfully ask for your support.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. Gus Corey here on behalf of the San Mateo County Transit District. The district was helpful with the emergency response in evacuating residents from the area during the blast, and so applaud the Senator's efforts to improve safety, and we ask for your support.
Next witness.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. Cindy Howell with Southern California Gas Company and San Diego Gas and Electric. We have a supportive amended position on the bill, and I think that the analysis does a great job of outlining some of our concerns with it, and we appreciate the author's willingness to work on us and accept the amendments related to valve placement, which for us, we own thousands of miles of natural gas pipeline, and we want to be able to have an engineering perspective as to where the valve placement is best suited and will best deliver increase in safety, and that may mean closer than the spacing requirements under federal law, and it may suggest that different spacing or greater spacing be available. The other thing I just wanted to point out, and we hope to continue working with the author's office on, is related to permitting requirements that will be necessitated to effectuate the infrastructure changes that are required by the bill. Currently, we have had situations where getting one local permit for a project to replace part of a pipeline took 9 months. So considering that this bill could require replacement of hundreds of valves, that not only will require excavation, but also potentially installation of vaults that could be sized 10 feet by 10 feet by 20 feet in order to house the new remote or automatic valves. It could create substantial burdens and delays related to pipeline infrastructure changes if we don't address local, state, federal permitting. So we're working on some proposals that we think will facilitate things, and we'll look forward to working with the author of hopefully trying to get some streamlined permitting included in this proposal or another one. Thank you.
And happy to assist as well when it comes to that local permitting. But just for clarification, you mentioned the flexibility in the plans for the shutoff valves. I do believe that's addressed by the amendment taken by Senator Yee.
Yes, and we appreciate that very much. So we're supporting.
Now in support?
Yeah, we're now in support.
Okay, thank you. Next witness, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Christy Bauma representing the California Professional Firefighters. As all of you know, many of my members responded on scene to that disaster and couldn't even commence some of their fire and rescue operations until the gas shutoff was accomplished for everybody's safety, so we are pleased to be this bill.
Thank you very much. Other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Questions, comments from committee? Senator Strickland.
Senator Yee, from my perspective, I appreciate the amendments that you were taking in, as was testified here. The permit requirement, I would like to, I will vote for it today, but if we don't address that issue as it comes back, then I would not support it if we didn't address that issue. But today, I will support the bill.
Okay. Other questions, comments from committee? Senator Wright.
I think, Senator, typically I don't like when we're trying to do regulations and statute, and in large part because if it's wrong, then we don't allow the flexibility to something like the PUC. The regulatory issue you described would only be one thing, but I think you moved it, and you moved me, for example, by providing flexibility in where they go. But I think you're going to find you'll have a little bit of difficulty when you try to get to the issue of the permits for the vaults, because you'll just have a lot of local governments and county governments will simply say, we don't want a vault there. And in some cases that I've seen, it's actually taken 2 or 3 years to get the permit, and they sometimes take thousands of dollars. So, and in the case of San Bruno, I would submit that probably the most destructive element was the explosion itself, the resulting fire. And even if you had a valve, there would still be a period of time that the gas in the valve would still have to escape. And so in this instance, my reading suggests that you might have saved 3 to 5 minutes in terms of having the valve and not having the valve, in terms of when the PG&E people would have been able to shut it down. But what I hope you do, and I'm gonna vote for it today, but the local permitting, you'll find that'll be far more challenging as you start moving into saying that you get the permits. The other thing that I think we'll have to address will be the cost. Depending upon what you do with the local permitting, you could be talking about a process that takes 20 to 30 years and costs several $billion to complete. So, you want to measure the whole thing, recognizing that this won't do anything to stop an explosion if you have a pipe failure. It'll only affect the amount of time that the gas moves after you've already had the explosion. So the people would already be dead for the most part, and you might save 15 or 20 minutes at best before the emergency people could go and help them. And I hope that what we don't forget in any event is that whether it's natural gas, gasoline, or electricity, we're playing with volatile compounds, and those are hazards that we encounter every day. It takes a San Bruno to make you realize, wow, in everybody's house, whether you're in Sacramento or Los Angeles or San Bruno or San Francisco, that the potential for that. If somebody dealt with a gas station, we've got millions of gallons of gasoline that have leaked into soil under cities and into neighborhoods. So, there are a number of things that we have that we kind of sort of just have to live with because we want a society. But I'm with you today, and I hope you'll work on the permits and time and consider cost. But I'm a vote today.
Any closing comments?
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to Senator Strickland and to Senator Wright, to you, Mr. Chair. We continue to struggle with different elements on this particular bill. We are very committed to trying to, where it's becoming apparent that we can effectuate some improvements, we're moving in that direction. There are still a lot of other ancillary issues that needs to be worked out. We are committed to doing that with all the different stakeholders. I think the flexibility that has been talked about is referenced in this particular bill. There are still unknowns. One of the tragedy in the San Bruno, and the lesson that we learned is the close proximity between gas lines and water lines. And because of that explosion, it was really hard to get the first responders to put out the fire because there was just no water. So there's just a lot of issues that still need to be addressed. I think the automatic or remote shutoff was just one thing that we sort of picked on. We are, looking at the permitting, still trying to create some additional flexibility so that this bill can, in fact, address a variety of different situations and conditions throughout the state of California. So with that, we will continue to work with you, Mr. Chair, and with that urgent item.
Okay. Before taking a motion on this, let me also just say, I think it's a good bill, made better by the amendments taken here today. As for the issue of the local government permitting, something that I think is important, happy to help with that. But for abundant clarity to members of the committee that share the concern. I think the bottom line is that the local government permitting needs to be addressed. We need to help facilitate that. Maybe it's part of this bill. It doesn't necessarily have to be part of this bill. It could be part of another Senator Yee bill. It could be part of another, bill relative to San Bruno or anyone. As long as it gets taken care of, I wouldn't want the fact that it's possibly in another vehicle to hold up this bill, because this bill does merit support on its own. That being said, is there a motion on this bill? Senator Wright moves the bill. Please call the roll.
Padilla.
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Fuller. Aye. Fuller, aye. Berryhill. Aye. Berryhill, aye. Corbett. De Leon. DeSaulnier. Pavley. Rubio. Semidian. Strickland.
Aye.
Strickland, aye. Wright.
Aye.
Wright, aye.
Okay.
Pavley, aye.
Okay. Well, we'll keep that bill.
Thank you very much,
We'll
Mr.
keep
Chair
it
and
on call
Senators.
for absent members. Thank you, Mr. Yee. Senator Kehoe has been waiting patiently. This is item number 6, colleagues, SB 585.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you turning it on, or am I? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, I wanted feedback, but I was hoping for human rather than electronic. This bill, SB 535, requires that there be sufficient funding in the California Solar Initiatives program to fund non-residential solar installations. As you are all aware, CSI has been an extremely successful program. A record number of residential and non-residential solar roofs have been installed across the state, as was intended. It's resulted in $4.5 billion in private sector investment to our solar industry, making California the lead in the nation in solar install and total investments. Information data collected by the Solar Alliance, one of the sponsors of the bill, illustrates that CSI has been successful to date, including 80,000 solar installations, both residential and non-residential, totaling 800 megawatts of power, resulting in over a million metric tons of annual CO2 emissions reductions and thousands of jobs. But in the non-residential portion of the program, all the funds have been expended. This program involves 10 levels of declining rebate incentives, members, and we've successfully completed levels 1 through 6, and now are at level 7. Both PG&E and SDG&E have expended all the non-residential funds for the remaining 3 incentive levels. Southern California Edison is believed to have only enough funding through the remainder of this year, but it will fall short of completing the final levels of the program. This bill ensures that California completes what it set out to do under the CSI program and requires that funding be collected to complete all 10 levels of the non-residential solar program. The shortfall is roughly a little under $200 million. About $30 million has been collected on interest in the accounts, so that leaves, the difference would need to be collected from the ratepayers and authorizes the PUC to collect that amount to finish the 10 levels of the non-residential solar program. I believe it's money well spent. And the bill, as I said, is sponsored by the Solar Alliance. With me today is, in support of the bill, are Andrew McAllister of the Center for Sustainable Energy in San Diego and Blair Sweezy with SunPower Corporation. We can go to the witnesses, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. First witness, please.
Thank you, Senator, and good morning, Senators. My name is Blair Sweezy. I'm Director of Market Development and Public Policy at SunPower. And I am here today representing the Solar Alliance. The Solar Alliance is a national alliance of solar photovoltaic or PV manufacturers, integrators, and financiers. The majority of our members do business in California, and many, including SunPower, have offices and headquarters in California. So what I want to do today is just highlight very quickly the many successes and benefits of the CSI. I've provided, the Solar Alliance has provided you with a couple of handouts which have a lot of the data and information that I'll be referring to. I think key point is that just in 4 years since its launch, and this was meant to be a 10-year program, the CSI has really become a landmark success. Senator Kehoe mentioned the installations of so far of 80,000 systems totaling 800 megawatts, which is the capacity nearly equivalent to two large-scale utility gas-fired power plants, and another 400 megawatts is pending right now under development. But perhaps most importantly, these systems are saving customers money on their electricity bills. And here I want to highlight in particular the savings that have accrued to the public sector and to schools in particular. Public sector applications accounted for fully half of all the megawatts that were applied for last year, and about a quarter of these systems are already installed and operating today. We have calculated that the solar systems installed at California schools, water districts, local governments, and nonprofits will save these groups a total of $1.3 billion in electricity costs over the 30 years of expected operation. And schools alone will save $1 billion, which will free up resources to retain teachers and dampen the budget cuts that many districts are facing. In short, solar is saving teachers' jobs. The CSI programs also dedicated 10% of its budget, or $216 million, to support solar installations on single and multifamily affordable housing in California. These programs have sparked workforce training partnerships with over 30 job training programs and will bring the benefits of solar to more than 16,000 low-income families. In terms of job creation, CSI has been a powerful driver of business expansion and new business creation in the state. As a result of the solar industry growth spurred mainly by CSI, California now has an estimated 36,000 solar jobs. And just using SunPower as an example, we have 1,000 direct employees in California and can count another 2,700 indirect jobs through our 180 small business dealers spread across the state. And because of the CSI program and other solar policies adopted by the state legislature, SunPower has chosen to grow our global headquarters in San Jose as well as our office in Richmond, and we're opening a new solar panel manufacturing plant in Milpitas next week, which will be dedicated next week and will provide 100 new jobs at the outset. So these policies are bringing solar manufacturing here to California. Two additional points. Unlike most large power plant development, CSI solar system installations and the associated jobs are geographically distributed across the state. The top 5 counties for CSI system applications are San Diego, Los Angeles, Santa Clara, Orange, and Riverside, but a number of rural counties are also high on the list, including Fresno, Kern, and Ventura. Finally, another explicit goal of the CSI program is market transformation. The CSI program was designed to be responsive to economies of scale in the market. That is, as the solar market grows, it is expected that solar systems costs will drop and the incentives offered through the program will decline. In fact, in 2007, when the CSI was first implemented, solar systems were being installed at average costs exceeding $10 a watt. Today, many companies can install solar on homes and businesses for $6 a watt. And by design, the CSI incentive levels have fallen as demand has increased. The average incentive level has dropped from $2.50 a watt in 2007 to 35 cents a watt today, while the solar market continues to expand. So importantly, this means that every ratepayer dollar invested in the CSI program today generates 7 times the amount of solar than was installed at the outset of the program. This is one reason why the CPUC's Division of Ratepayer Advocates recently expressed its support for the program. That is, the incentives in these final steps of the program, which Senator Kehoe outlined, are highly leveraged by private investment. Finally, more than $4.5 billion of private sector investment has flowed into California since the CSI program began in 2007. This capital has accelerated solar cost reductions by enabling the industry to invest in innovation and scale up. So I've outlined the many successes of the program, but these successes are now at risk. As Senator Kehoe outlined, the CPUC has identified a program budget shortfall of $200 million, and as a result, the program has stopped funding non-residential applications in both PG&E's and San Diego Gas and Electric's service territories, which seriously impacts the ability of public agencies and schools, among others, to continue to access the program going forward. So we see SB 585 as essential to extend the program in order to provide ratepayers with the full benefits of the most cost-effective phase of the program, which we are now entering. And with this solid record of success, the Solar Alliance strongly urges the committee to fully fund the CSI program by supporting passage of SB 585.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the context, appreciate the history. I think there's a lot of support for the bill. I'd like to try to be brief as we continue with testimony. Next witness, please.
Great, thank you. I've marked out many of the comments I was going to make because they overlapped a little bit, so I'll try to be efficient. My name is Andrew McAllister, Director of Policy at the California Center for Sustainable Energy. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. It's a very worthwhile effort, and thank you for the Senator Kehoe, for taking the lead on this bill. The California Center for Sustainable Energy, just for those who are not familiar with us, is a nonprofit. We have about 65 employees now. We're based in San Diego. We are the program administrator for this program, for the California Solar Initiative in San Diego Gas and Electric Service Territory. We do many we're sort of a nerve center for much of the clean energy activity that goes on in the region, particularly for small-scale renewables and to a certain extent for energy efficiency as well. So we provide a lot of community outreach, a lot of education. And so the reason I feel the need to point that out is that our role as an administrator of this program has really put us in touch with the marketplace, really with contractors, with customers, both businesses and residences. And we interface with them every day, and we see the actual impacts of this program in the marketplace, in growing jobs and growing businesses. So really a key point, we have literally hundreds of solar businesses in the San Diego region. The city of San Diego is the most solar city in the whole nation. And the region as a whole is number one, right up there in the counties as well. So obviously we have lots of resource, but we also have kind of the ecosystem in the economy that makes this program a success. It is vitally important that a program exists with the brand of the state of California on it. If this program were to go away, there would be much less power, or much less for the contractors themselves to lean on to say, hey, this is something that the state of California is moving forward with. As you all know, the governor has very high goals for distributed generation. Solar is central to that plan. 12,000 megawatts of the various scales of solar need to be installed in the next few years, and that is an order of magnitude more than we're doing now. So this issue is only going to become more important, not less important. And the Solar Initiative is really well designed to encourage an easy transition to what comes next as this technology amps up and scales up to that next level. I did want to point out that we have a wait list, as does PG&E and as soon will Edison, and it's populated about half and half with public entities, so schools and local jurisdictions, and private commercial entities. And so that public side, I think, is very important to keep note of. And without really trying too hard, there are a number of letters here that I brought from various public entities, cities and water districts and school districts that make it very clear, and are not form letters. I don't know if I can pass those around, but here you go. Great. Okay. These are not form letters, so these are actual from the heart letters. And those are the entities that have access to other kinds of financing, like the QECBs, like the CREBs, and they have relatively complex financing schemes to be able to make these projects work. And the CSI incentive, which for them is somewhat higher than it is for taxable entities, is really key to making those projects pencil out. And so I think that's a really key point here, is that the incentive has been declining, but it's still a very important part of the landscape. And finally, as Blair said, this is the most cost-effective part of the program. We're leveraging 20 times, if not more, of the capital from the incentive of private funds. There's as the capital markets get fixed, I think we're seeing more and more capital come to the table to want to invest in solar and other distributed generation. But again, that program structure enables that capital to come to the table and have faith that there's quality assurance happening as part of a state program or as part of a branded program, that there is data being collected about the marketplace so that data can be utilized to optimize projects. And finally, that there's some consumer protection, that there's some third party that can be relied on to ensure that the market continues to function. We don't really want to go back to the Wild West of everybody kind of gets, the uninformed customer asks a contractor for a bid, and I think we're past that. I think the industry is more professional than that now, and that's a direct consequence of the CSI. But we want to continue that professionalization as we scale up. And we need that at the smallest level, from the 1 kilowatt systems on up to the 1 megawatt and above systems. So here we're talking about relatively small systems, not utility scale, but it's all part of the same landscape. And I think the more we can ensure market transparency, market consistency going forward, that's a key thing you as policymakers and we as advocates can make happen. And so I encourage you to support the bill, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Question for Senator Kehoe before we call up witnesses. There's a recommended amendment on page 4 of the analysis. Just want to clarify whether you're accepting that as an author's amendment or not.
I see it, and we were aware of it, Mr. Chairman. The bill is silent on the performance-based PBI, so this is a big undertaking that I think deserves more discussion than being amended into my bill, which doesn't bring up the performance-based initiative.
It's pretty... Well, let's finish with testimony, then let's come back to the issue.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's hear from witnesses in support of the bill.
Mr. Chair and members, Ian Padilla representing the Coalition for Adequate School Housing. Many of our school district members are very interested in utilizing photovoltaic technology as a way to control long-term operational costs as well as to create healthier, more sustainable schools. But obviously this requires an initial investment, and so we fully support this bill because it would do that, and we would like to thank Senator Kehoe for introducing it. Thank you.
Bernadette Del Chiara with Environment California. We are here in strong support. The program's working and should be allowed to continue. Thank you.
Good morning, Patty Herrera for Clovis Unified Schools. We applaud Senator Kehoe's efforts to continue the CSI program. At our local level, this program would mean an operational savings to our school district of $2 million a year, which is really important to help us mitigate the state cuts. So we urge your support of the bill. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mark Garza. I'm the Director of Construction for Kings Canyon Unified School District in the beautiful city of Reedley, California. As the Director of Maintenance, I would like to just ask that you support this bill. This bill is very important to us. We have 17 school sites that are ready to rock and roll. We're shovel ready on a project. We're looking at just over 3 megawatts of solar on the facility, and we really look for your support. This is a way of really reducing the impact on our general budget. We spend quite a bit of money in our general budget going towards electrical bills, and this would really help us quite a bit. So I appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Chair, members, Rachel O'Brien, on behalf of the Union of Concerned Scientists, we're in strong support.
Committee members, this is Sue Cately with the California Solar Energy Industries Association. We're co-sponsors and we're in strong support. Thank you.
Chair and members, Adam Browning with the Vote Solar Initiative. We're in strong support. This is the last mile of the most cost-effective mile, if you will. You get the most bang for your buck out of this, and we're in strong support. Thank you.
Members, Roxanne Miller, representing the Mayor, City Council, City of San Jose. We're in strong support. Ask for your vote.
Other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition?
Thank you. Lenny Goldberg on behalf of TURN, representing small ratepayers. I don't think you heard the ratepayer perspective on this and the history of it.
That's why we have public comment.
That's why we have it. When we passed the CSI, there was a cap put on it. We have exceeded the cap on the commercial side because the incentives that were given out to commercial customers were not managed appropriately at the Public Utilities Commission, and they gave out more incentives than they should. So we still have 3 years to run on the commercial side. Residential ratepayers pay 50% of the cost of this program. We get 33% of the program, and then one can argue that schools and other things are kind of both commercial and residential. In this, the language of this bill explicitly says this is only for the commercial sector. So you are asking if it's $170 million cost overrun in the program, you're asking residential ratepayers to shell out an additional $85 million to subsidize the large commercial installations. We have no problem if the commercial side has run out of money because the incentives were not managed appropriately. We have no problem saying let the commercial side of this program pay that $170 million in additional costs. We do have a problem with saying that $85 million of it is going to be spent by assigned to residential ratepayers, for which there are no ability to access these funds whatsoever on the residential side. Now, people argue, well, there are benefits, there are system benefits from reducing greenhouse gases or maybe to schools. So we suggest an amendment that said, when we spoke with Senator Kehoe, that it should say this shall be assigned to the classes and of customers that benefit. If the PUC finds that there are some benefits which we think would be infinitesimal or relatively small to the residential class, then they can charge us. But we had an extensive negotiation at the PUC, which set a cap on this program. We had an extensive negotiation in the legislature, which set a cap on this program. Residential customers who are paying half of the program and receiving much less than half of the benefits are not asking for more money on the residential side. That's still to get out the door. So we object to paying $85 million, 50% of the cost, unless there's language that says PUC allocate the cost of this addition to the customer classes that benefit from it. And we think that's completely reasonable request, and we urge the committee to ask for that request. Thank you.
Any other witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Question, Senator Kehoe. I don't completely disagree with the issue of the dynamic that causes TURN some concern here. And
Neither do I.
And I think it's a good transition to, the question of the PBI, because we were forced to ask ourselves what was the root cause of the overuse of the fund here, oversubscription of the fund, and I think there's general support for wanting to fill that void and keep the program going. But should we not do so without paying attention to or even taking a look at what the root causes of it, and do we address that on a going forward basis or not?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree and understand that the PUC's administration of the PBI has been not up to par, open to criticism. But to take not the language, but the suggestion in item 4, I think right here at the table would be a little hard to do. I'm open to continuing my discussion. We should hear from the PUC on it. We should also know exactly what changing the PBI would do to the rest of the program, and I'm not certain that a blanket prohibition is the best way to go. But I will work with you. I told Mr. Goldberg I would work with him also, but to rule it out this morning, I think, is more than I want to do. Can we continue our conversation and make a commitment to looking at the PBI as we go forward?
Let's hear what the PUC and other members of the committee have to say.
Edward Randolph with the Public Utilities Commission. To clarify first, we have not taken a formal position on this bill as of yet. And so just here to add maybe some clarity to the situation. On the specific issue of what's the discount rate on the performance-based incentive, in July of 2010, when we first identified that there was going to be a shortfall, we put an immediate moratorium on issuing any more rebates or accepting any more applications on the non-residential sector. So that's on the commercial and the governmental sectors. And in that moratorium, we also put out for public comment several suggestions on what we could do to extend the funds further. One of the suggestions was to eliminate the discount rate entirely. One of the other suggestions was to transfer $40 million from the administrative accounts into the non-residential segments. And one of the other suggestions was to reduce the benefit, the rebate that the governmental sector gets slightly. They get a higher rebate than the other customer classes do because they don't benefit from a federal tax credit. The public comments on that overwhelmingly rejected eliminating the PBI or the discount rate entirely, which is why we did not do that. Come August of that year, we lifted the moratorium. We did transfer $40 million out of the administrative funds, but we left the rest of the program alone to continue to look at the issue. The issue is not specifically teed up on the discount rate in a proceeding right now, but we would be a solution to this concern right now may be for the PUC to look at the appropriateness of how we've set the discount rate and potentially lowering that discount rate going forward. I'd note that TURN in their public comments to the PUC last July was opposed to eliminating the discount rate entirely among some other ratepayer groups.
Okay. Other members of the committee wishing to chime in here? Senator Fuller.
Well, I would like to join Senator Padilla in sort of urging a solution to the classes. I think the CSI is a good program. I like what it's doing, but in my area, we literally are having like a taxpayer revolt against rates and a different tier system. Right. And so I'm not sure that I could say that the urgency to spread the residential spread the rate to the residential ratepayer was so strong because the program has been going along and we haven't exhausted all other remedies. So I'm kind of urging you to go ahead and look at what we could do that would either be the third of the options listed by the PUC, or if there's any more administrative money there, or changing it so that the ratepayer the residential ratepayer did not take the burden of the non-residential shortfall. And if that's possible, then I could be supportive. If it's not, I can wait and see how it goes, or I could go the other direction.
The way the ratepayer discussion in the bill is complicated. Not that complicated, but the residential and the non-residential components of the program, we would have to work out an agreement that is acceptable to all parties, or at least those two classes. And we are going to continue to discuss it with Lenny Goldberg and TURN and we want to get to a fair solution. On the PBI, I can make a commitment to work on that with you, but with the range of options that might be out there and the discussion that's already taken place.
Let me meet you halfway on that,
okay.
Senator Kehoe. So,
thank you, and I appreciate
with
that.
your commitment to try to address it, but let me be clear, address it sooner rather than later, meaning before it comes to the floor of the Senate for a vote.
That's right.
I'd rather address it before it leaves this House, as opposed to, kind
Understood.
of having an up or down option only with whatever may happen in the Assembly.
We will have a PBI solution that's acceptable to you before by the time it gets to the Senate floor. Hopefully, by the time I think this is also key fiscal, is it not?
It'll go to your Appropriations Committee.
Right. So we can look at it before then.
Okay. Other questions from committee? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'll move the bill.
Senator Corbett moves the bill. Let's call the roll.
Padilla.
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Fuller.
Aye.
Fuller, aye. Berryhill. Berryhill, aye. Corbett. Corbett, aye. De Leon. DeSaulnier. DeSaulnier, aye. Pavley. Pavley, aye. Rubio. Semidian. Semidian, aye. Strickland. Strickland, aye. Wright.
That bill has sufficient support, but we'll hold it on call for absent members to add on. Next item, please come forward, Senator Lowenthal. This is item number 8, SCR 6.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Having access to the Internet has quickly become a key to economic success in the United States. Kids use the Internet to learn, to do homework. Adults use the Internet to seek employment. For many low-income families, however, and for a variety of other issues, for many low-income families, however, the cost of access to the Internet can be prohibitive. What we have today is a Senate resolution that encourages all state and local affordable housing lenders to promote free Internet access to the residents of affordable housing. The costs are small, and there are entities such as One Economy Foundation that can help cover the cost. They've already covered a significant number of affordable housing units already with Internet access. The benefits are huge. By providing easy access to the Internet for low-income families, we can make affordable housing even more of a ladder to success than it already is. And with me, I have Alan Greenlee of the One Economy Foundation.
Thank you, Senator. And Senators, thank you for having me today. I'd first like to thank Senator Lowenthal for supporting this resolution for the second year in a row, and appreciate the committee's attention to this very important matter. One Economy is a global nonprofit that seeks to leverage the power of technology to connect low-income people to information and resources that they can use to join the economic mainstream. And we do our work in 3 ways. First of all, we connect people to the Internet in the home. The second thing we do is provide training and other digital literacy activities to help support people's use of that Internet access that's available. And thirdly, we provide a site or locations for people to go online and do constructive and good things, like help their kids with their homework, communicate with their schools, help folks file for their federal income taxes and receive millions of dollars back in earned income tax credit, like we're completing this tax year. Our organization has worked to connect about 50,000 units of affordable housing to Internet access. 15,000 of those are here in the state of California. The resolution, as the Senator mentions, merely seeks to expand the support that the state of California has articulated since 2003 as part of the low-income housing tax credit program. There's been an incentive to connect affordable housing buildings to the Internet, and since that time, about 20,000 low-income households are enjoying free Internet access, and about 40% of those developments receiving tax credits are providing Internet service as a resident amenity. We have worked very hard to make sure that we have the support of the affordable housing industry, and the resolution merely seeks to invite other public sector entities to support this work by making their resources available to support not only the connection to the Internet, but also the maintenance and the upkeep of that network over time. So we'd like to support this resolution, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Are there witnesses in support of the resolution? Any witnesses in opposition? Any questions from committee? Comments from committee? Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Senator Corbett moves the item. Let's call the roll.
Padilla.
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Fuller. Fuller, no. Berryhill. Corbett. Corbett, aye. De Leon. DeSaulnier. DeSaulnier, aye. Pavley. Rubio. Semidian. Semidian, aye. Strickland.
No.
Strickland, no. Wright.
Okay. Just shy, but I have a good feeling about
I have
it.
a good
We'll leave
feeling,
the bill on
too,
call for
Senator.
absent members to add on. Thank you, and
Thank
actually
you.
also invite you to share the resolution and your efforts with the recently formed Broadband Council.
Oh, I will.
For their consideration.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item. Let's come back to item number 2, Senator Simidian's SB 37. And if this bill looks at all familiar, Senator Simidian will explain why.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the committee's hearing our SB 37 today. This is a bill that sets up a process for the siting of LNG facilities on or along the California coast. And I want to be very clear. The bill has nothing to do with whether you're an advocate for LNG along the California coast or an opponent of LNG along the California coast. The bill is about the fact that there is no process in the state of California for thoughtful consideration and deliberation of these facilities. And that was made abundantly clear when, as the committee analysis reminds us, more than a half dozen projects were proposed up and down the California coast during this past decade. And, to use a technical sequence term, all hell broke loose. Everybody and their uncle suddenly had a project. Local jurisdictions were thrown into the mix. People were trying to figure out what's the basis for evaluation. And my argument on this bill, members, is that no one was well served. If you were an advocate for LNG, how'd that work out for us? There wasn't a single facility that was approved up and down the California coast. If you were an opponent, you may take some solace in that fact, but you discovered that there was no basis for the debate and deliberation in a thoughtful construct. And so this measure, which you have seen before, struggled because, understandably, with a half dozen different projects in place, the folks who thought they were at the front of the horse race said, no, this is not the time to be putting a process in place. We think we're going to get there first. Please don't do that. What I've done is come back and said, all right, now that the dust is settled, and there are, for all intents and purposes, no active proposals, why don't we put a process in place so that 2 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, when there is another proposal, we say, great, we know how we're going to handle that, and there's a process that was put in place without special interest pushing and shoving, which would understandably attend the kind of competition we saw during the past decade. That's what the bill does. There's no opposition to the bill. Your staff analysis does a very nice job of laying out the 4 provisions of the bill on the first and second pages of the analysis. What the bill does is it says, please prove to us that you've consulted with the United States military, because there were concerns up and down the coast of California, but particularly in Southern California, not only about homeland security issues, but about the potential for a facility to interfere with military training. This was particularly true with the Navy and the Marine Corps, and we work closely with them in the development of the language in the bill. Then the bill says, could we please make sure we know what the need is? Because you can't really have a no-project alternative discussion if you don't know what the need is. You also can't consider whether or not you want to move forward, even if there are unmitigatable impacts, unless you know why you're going to move forward, that there's some need. The development of a matrix is simply designed to say that if there are 2 or 3 or 4 different projects, you can compare and contrast the different features, so you know as you go forward which ones have merit and which ones are not using the latest and best technology. And then finally, there's some clarifying information about when the EIR is done by whoever the lead agency ought to be, here's some of the issues that need to be addressed. That's what the bill does, no opposition. Some folks have said, why do you keep pushing the bill, Joe? There's not a damn thing going on the coast. And I say that's exactly why we should get this done now, so that when that time comes, we will have done our work and we'll have a thoughtful process in place. Respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you very much. Witnesses in support? No stampede here. Witnesses in opposition?
Hello, my name is Yvonne Chambers, and I work for the Planning and Conservation League. We're in support of this bill, and we respectfully urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other witnesses in support? Seeing none, are there witnesses in opposition to the bill? Seeing none, do we have questions, comments from committee? No questions. Do I have a motion on the bill? Senator DeSaulnier moves the bill. Let's call the roll.
Padilla?
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Fuller? Fuller, no. Berryhill? Corbett?
Aye.
Corbett, aye. De Leon? Desaulniers? Desaulniers, aye. Pavley? Rubio? Semidian?
Aye.
Semidian, aye. Strickland? Strickland, no. Wright?
Aye.
Wright, aye.
Okay. We need one more vote. Have some absent members. We'll leave that bill on call.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Senator Semidian. Next bill, item number 3, SB 44 by Senator Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Whenever you're ready.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm here to present SB 44, and I am glad to accept the committee amendments with regard to the pipeline mapping. I do know we have an agreement to continue to work on this issue to make sure that we get the language correct to ensure that our local first responders have the types of maps they need to be able to respond in case of emergency. So I thank you for allowing that continued discussion.
Right. I believe the amendments, both in the scope of the response plans as well as the access to the pipeline mapping, is focused on transmission lines. And then there's the proposed or suggested amendment relative to the CPUC proceeding that's already underway. So it's not calling them upon them to call for a new proceeding, but to expand the scope of the current proceeding to include this.
Yes, that's correct.
So those are the suggested amendments under items comment 3, 4, and 5.
Yes, so I consider those as the technical amendments, but we'll continue the discussion on the actual mapping
item number
language.
2, which is the specific jurisdiction language.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Mr. Chair and members, the reason I introduced this bill is, unfortunately, we've heard a lot about the terrible disaster in San Bruno, and as I watched that disaster unfold, it was of great concern to me that at first there appeared to not be a lot of knowledge about the existence of the pipeline through the neighborhoods. And then in the weeks after the terrible disaster, more information began to be disclosed about additional pipelines that might be at risk and those that were on a list that might even be the most dangerous. And many of those ended up being in my district, in District 10. So I thought it was important to take a lesson from this terrible tragedy and remember that in my experience in local government, that we do have information on other various hazards, and those are disclosed so that we have the opportunity to make sure that our first responders can stage appropriately, have the right sort of equipment necessary in the event there may be a disaster in the future. So this bill would require that natural gas operators improve their communication and coordination with our first responders by requiring that the Public Utilities Commission consult with the Office of Emergency Services and the California Fire Chiefs Association to adopt stricter emergency response standards. As I already mentioned, some of these gas lines are in my district, and we have the added concern that some of them are very near or even crossing seismic fault lines and might be even more at risk in the event of an earthquake. And according to the U.S. Geological Survey, the chance of having a large earthquake in California over the next 30 years is 99%. So I think this is something we should be very concerned about. And I'm especially concerned because the Hayward fault line, which runs through the 10th District, is one that is a particular concern and most likely to have a rupture in the near future. Let's hope that doesn't happen. I've met with PG&E on several occasions and with my local fire chiefs multiple times, and as a result of those meetings, this bill came forward to address these concerns where there might be even some gaps with federally required emergency response plans. So in the event, let's hope it never happens, but in the event of a natural gas emergency in the future, my hope is that California would be more prepared and our local first responders would be more prepared to be able to have the information that they need to do their jobs and take care of our communities. Here in support today are several of my local fire chiefs, and this bill does have the support of the Fire Chiefs Association. Hayward Fire Chief Craig Bueno, who's currently the president of the Alameda County Fire Chiefs Association, Demetrius Schaefer from Alameda County, Deputy Fire Chief and former Chief of Newark, and our Fremont Fire Chief Bruce Martin. And they're here to testify in support.
Thank you, Senator Corbett. Gentlemen. Good morning. My name is Chief Demetrius Schaefer, as the Senator said, and I'm President-elect of the California Fire Chiefs Association. I would like to first thank the Chair of the committee and Senator Corbett for allowing me to speak to you today about Senate Bill 44 on behalf of the California Fire Chiefs Association. My comments will be brief. The California Fire Chiefs Association supports Senate Bill 44, which will serve to require operators of natural gas transmission lines to improve communication and coordination with first responders by adopting stricter emergency response standards. Specifically, we support procedures designed to ensure that emergency shutdown and pressure reduction is utilized in a timely fashion and that the decision to do so is primarily based on the public's safety. We also support requirements that ensure natural gas operators establish and maintain liaisons with fire, police, and other local officials charged with ensuring the public's safety. And finally, we support requirements that ensure all fire chiefs are given up-to-date maps where natural gas pipelines are located. The fire chiefs remain dedicated to improved coordination with utility company partners and are interested in practical solutions that are field-ready, timely, and accurate. Again, thank you very much for allowing me to be here today, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next, Chief.
Chair and committee members, Bruce Martin, Fire Chief for the City of Fremont, representing the Alameda County Fire Chiefs Association in support of the bill. In addition to what my colleague said, we're particularly interested in the language in the bill that ensures that there is a strong liaison between natural gas utilities and public safety agencies at the command level. Acknowledging that this liaison does occur on the street from time to time, it's important for the sake of preparedness and to avert another tragedy such as we saw in San Bruno, that this liaison takes place at a command level with managers from those utilities. Thank you.
My name is Craig Bueno. I'm the Fire Chief of the City of Hayward. My 27th year in the fire service, and 23 of those were on the line. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, really appreciate the opportunity to be before you today. This issue is quite important. Our ability to mitigate these types of situations is contingent upon our ability to control the flow of that gas. To be able to liaison with PG&E and have proper access to the maps is critical. As the past president of the Alameda County Fire Chiefs and the Fire Chief of City of Hayward, we're here in support.
Other witnesses in support?
Kent Cowsworth, Pacific Gas and Electric, in support of the bill. We have already begun the work that's called for in this bill, and we support its enactment.
On behalf of the California State Firefighters Association and support, my name is Efraim Vargas. Thank you.
Cindy Howell with SoCalGas and SDG&E. We are committed to the safety of our employees, our customers, and the communities we serve. We applaud and appreciate Senator Corbett in introducing this bill, and we're happy to support it.
Edward Randolph with the California Public Utilities Commission. We support the measure.
Lenny Goldberg on behalf of TURN. We support the measure.
Michael Richard with AARP California on behalf of our 3.2 million members in support.
Other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Questions, comments from committee? Bill's been moved. Any questions or comments from committee? Seeing none. Let's call the roll.
Just briefly close, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say I want to thank in particular I'd like to thank PG&E for working very closely with us to put together this legislation, and I want to thank the firefighters of my district who also were such strong advocates for this, and also firefighters throughout the state. We have plenty of letters from other entities, and I want to thank those firefighters who, through mutual response, were actually on the line in San Bruno too, which helped us put together the language for this bill as well, and it was the impetus for it as well. So thank you, members, very much.
Okay, thank you. Let's call the roll.
Padilla?
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Fuller? Fuller, aye. Berryhill? Corbett? Aye. Corbett, aye. De Leon? DeSaulnier? DeSaulnier, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Rubio? Semidian? Semidian, aye. Strickland? Strickland, aye. Wright?
That bill has sufficient support, but we'll keep it on call for absent members to add on. Thank you, gentlemen. Next item is item number 5, SB 454 by Senator Pavley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Senate Bill 454 is what I call a common sense measure to ensure that consumers are getting a fair deal with companies selling energy efficient products like appliances and services, and that the state realize its energy efficient goals. We know energy efficiency is a lot more affordable and economical than building more power plants, etc. Senate Bill 454 gives the Energy Commission the ability to enforce energy efficiency code violations for appliances and requires the permits before energy efficiency rebates can be dispersed by investor-owned utilities. I have also agreed to work with the committee on amendments that strengthen existing building energy efficiency standards enforcement rather than giving new authority to the CEC. That's the California Energy Commission. I would like to thank the chair, staff for working with me and my staff to find ways we can improve enforcement and agreeing to move this bill with the concept of strengthening existing ways to do just that. We will work together on ways the CEC can help with the enforcement with the Contractor State License Board and the Attorney General's Office, which are the current avenues for building efficiency standards enforcement. This is critical, since studies commissioned by the CEC have shown that up to 90% of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, HVAC, jobs that are not being done with proper permits. And many of these jobs are being done illegally by unlicensed contractors. HVAC jobs that are done incorrectly not only rob consumers of energy savings and make it impossible for the state to meet their energy goals, but they pose a real safety risk, and people could be injured or worse by badly installed systems. There are also widespread violations and fraud in the appliance industry that this bill now will address. This bill ensures that California's energy efficiency policies actually provide the cost savings to consumers and energy savings for the state that we expect. The CEC has received numerous complaints regarding violations of building and appliance energy efficiency standards. Similar data has been found for re-roofing projects. Furthermore, half of the appliances sold in California have not been properly certified to meet California's energy efficiency standards. Neither local building departments nor the CSLB have the expertise to go after many types of energy efficiency violations without the CEC assistance. So I appreciate Chair Padilla, your willingness to work with me to ensure that enforcement of these standards is improved. With me today, I have Noah Long and Victoria Rome from NRDC, as well as Scott Wetch, all sponsors of the bill, who will speak in favor of it.
Mr. Chairman and members, today Scott Wetch on behalf of the California State Pipe Trades Council and the State Building and Construction Trades Council. I want to thank Senator Pavley because while this isn't the sexiest issue out there, it's the type of nuts and bolts legislation that is really, really important. Title 24 basically is landmark standards leading the way for the rest of the country in regard to energy efficiency. Unfortunately, what we've seen since they were updated last is that it has pushed the underground economy, a lot of contractors to go and pursue work through sort of under the table types of situations. I mean, here's the prime example is under Title 24, whenever you go in and do a replacement or a major repair on a heating and air conditioning system, you need to test the ductwork to ensure that it is it meets all the energy efficiency standards. Then you have to go and bring in a HERS-rated independent consultant to come in and test it and certify that, yes, the system is meeting the state standards. It's very critical to ensuring that we actually meet our energy efficiency goals. The problem, what happens is currently reputable union and reputable non-union contractors are being undercut by scofflaws, basically, who will go and put in a bid and be able to undercut the bid by thousands of dollars by agreeing not to perform all of the requirements of Title 24. And the way they do that is by not pulling a building permit. And sometimes they do it in collusion with the property owner, but more often than not, they just undercut the bid, don't pull the permit, and do the job quickly. And in that instance, everyone loses, including the reputable contractors. So this is a very good bill, and we would urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you. Chair Padilla and members of the committee. Can you hear me now? Yeah. My name is Noah Long, and I represent the Natural Resource Defense Council. I'd like to thank the author and the committee staff, as well as the members of the committee, for working with us on this bill. As Senator Pavley mentioned and my colleague Mr. Wetch spoke about, we are concerned that under compliance with these critical energy efficiency enforcement laws is undermining our state's ability to reach our key energy efficiency goals and also related are, of course, our climate and other pollution reduction goals. Now, the energy efficiency policies in place, including these appliance and building codes, have saved billions of dollars for California consumers and really helped us boost our economy. As we all know from recent analysis, these jobs the energy efficiency jobs are some of the most important parts to our coming economy and a real bright spot for California. Energy efficiency creates 50 jobs for every one job lost to the fossil fuel economy, and energy efficiency standards are really the base and set a new floor for California performance, but also really allow California to set key leadership across the entire country. So the enforcement, the full enforcement, and the credibility of these standards is really key going forward to make sure that California can continue to lead the way in terms of energy efficiency. And I'll just add a couple points. On the energy efficiency appliance standards, we've seen numbers that as high as 50% of appliances sold in California haven't been certified to the California standards, which doesn't mean, and we shouldn't imply that means that that 50% aren't complying with the California standards, but it does mean that we don't know the exact nature of the marketplace, and that's a real problem. So I think appliance standards are a really good place to start, and we're really glad that the chair is committed to working with the author to ensure that we adequately improve building code enforcement as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Chris Walker on behalf of the California Association of Sheet Metal Air Conditioning Contractors. We are in strong support of the bill and appreciate the author bringing this before you today. When it comes to Title 24, it's all about compliance and enforcement. Our contractors are out there complying with the laws, are being undercut daily by contractors who are not. And it's plain and simple, the market drivers today do not support compliance. And until that happens, we need enforcement to fill the gap. We support the bill.
Okay, next witness, please.
Chair, members, Rachel O'Brien, on behalf of the U.S. Green Building chapter, Northern California chapter, and the Union of Concerned Scientists, in strong support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Mitch Seaman with the California Labor Federation in support.
Next witness.
Thank you, Senators. I'm Jessie Halpern Finnerty, Policy Analyst at the Don Biles Center for Employment in the Green Economy and the Center for Labor Research and Education at UC Berkeley. We recently released a report called the California Workforce Education and Training Needs Assessment for Energy Efficiency, Distributed Generation, and Demand Response. And as you can tell by the title, it's a long report, but this testimony will just take about 2.5 minutes, if that's all right.
Actually, I may ask you to truncate that to about 30 to 45 seconds if you can. Just
Okay.
give us the main points.
Okay. Today I'm speaking to why this bill is critical for achieving California's energy goals and why we really need a coordinated statewide effort that involves the CEC and uses their expertise in this area. California has a really large amount of public and ratepayer investments in the incentives and rebates to promote energy efficiency to comply with and go beyond code. The IOUs are spending about $1 billion a year in incentives, many going toward the residential and commercial construction industry. We also have really good, strong energy efficiency building code in Title 24. However, in the residential sector, there's really no good enforcement mechanism in place, and code enforcement varies tremendously over the many building departments in local jurisdictions. So there's many contractors not pulling building permits, as we've heard, not triggering enforcement of building code. And we call these low road markets, where people are competing on the basis of cost instead of quality. And it's a really big problem in the HVAC industry, as our report showed. It's a primary example of a low road market in energy efficiency, and it's a really big user of energy in the state. Regulators and industry experts are really well aware of the problems in the HVAC industry. A 2008 report by the CEC estimates that as many as 50% of all new HVAC systems and 85% of all replacement systems are not installed to a quality specification. The result is a huge loss of potential energy savings, especially as HVAC grows a percentage share of energy use. And these problems are really not visible to consumers who they hire the contractors, and they're not able to see whether the work is done to code or not. Supporting code enforcement and compliance in residential HVAC and other energy efficiency sectors is critical to achieving the state's ambitious energy goals and supporting the growth of the market for good quality contractors. Any public or ratepayer investment should result in work that meets all state laws, but the burden should not be on utility programs alone to ensure that this happens, since they only drive a portion of the market. We need to have a statewide strategy to address this problem, and the CEC has expertise to offer in this area.
Thank you. Next witness, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Senators. I'm Lisa Hoyos from the Apollo Alliance, and we are in strong support of this bill. Our steering committee is made up of several environmental groups and labor organizations, including the sponsors of this bill. And we believe it represents the perfect marriage, if you will, between high road jobs and high quality standards in the efficiency space, as well as the efficiency outcomes we need. And I know you all know that a third or so of our GHG emissions are because of emissions coming from buildings. HVAC is the second highest use of energy within buildings. And if we can upgrade the implementation or the installation of our systems to ensure we're actually meeting those efficiency outcomes, it will really benefit our workers who need to be highly trained to execute the efficiency standards at the rate we're searching for. And secondly, it will help us reduce our GHGs. So the final point would just be that the CEC has expertise that we believe would inform the Contracting State Licensing Board, and we would like to make sure that whatever arrangements are made as this bill is reconstituted, that we ensure that we are able to integrate the knowledge and expertise of the California Energy Commission. Thanks.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, I'm Silvio Ferrari with the California Building Industry Association.
We had originally filed an opposed unless amended position. Since then, we have removed that position. We have worked with the author's staff, and the sponsor of the bill, and have removed that position. We look forward to seeing the new amendments, and thank you very much for working with us.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Elizabeth Gavrick with the California Association of Realtors. We were also on that opposed unless amended letter, and we just wanted to thank the author for making a commitment to work with us, and we look forward to looking at the amendments from this committee and working to ensure that our concerns continue to be alleviated by the new language. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Brenda Coleman here on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce. Wish to echo the comments made by my colleagues and appreciate working with Senator Pavley and her staff on this issue, as well as with the sponsors of the bill. We believe in enforcing compliance. Of course, we also want to make sure that we definitely go after the bad actors that aren't pulling permits without unfairly penalizing those licensed contractors that are practicing protocol and pulling their permits. So going forward, we will look forward to working with the author and her staff on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Other witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, before turning to questions, comments from committee, let me first of all thank Senator Pavley for our dialogue and I think her flexibility in trying to meet the goals that she laid out in introducing the bill, but doing so in a more focused and pragmatic way. I think the significant difference between the bill as introduced and even the analysis that's in our binders is this new direction to continue the effort that she's laid out, but only on the appliance standards and enforcement piece as it relates to building codes and building inspections and building everything else. There's already a collaboration between the Energy Commission and the State Licensing Board, which can and should be sort of augmented and strengthened, and that's kind of the direction in a nutshell that Senator Pavley has suggested we go in. So it's a little bit more than a slight a modification to the bill, but a significant one, and one that's in a much better direction as far as I'm concerned, and I'd be supportive of this new direction, knowing that we still have some specifics to flesh out here. Are there questions, comments from committee? Senator Wright.
I'm moved by certainly the realtors in the building industry, because I came in as a no. I've not seen the amendment, so I'm kind of, I'm prepared to kind of watch it go forward. I'm not certain if someone doesn't pull a permit, it's not clear to me how you catch them anyway. I mean, if in most cities you pull a permit and then you go and do the work. If you don't pull a permit, then no one knows that you did it. If I use, and whether it's a licensed or an unlicensed contractor, if no permit's pulled, then the government doesn't know what occurred. I mean, what does happen is that when a house is resold, if there was work that was done that was not to code, you'd have to bring it up to code before you could effect the transfer, and that's kind of sort of current law. So I'm not clear what we're trying to effect here. I mean, if I'm building 10 houses in Malibu, probably unlikely, but if I were building 10 houses in Malibu, when I put the foundation down, there'd be an inspection. When I did the framing, there would be an inspection. When I installed the HVAC, there'd be an inspection. When I put the roof on, there would be an inspection. And when I get ready to sell that same house, the city of Malibu will come and make sure that there were no bootleg things that were attached, and those would be required to be fixed. What are we trying to fix with this bill? I'm not certain.
Lots of times things fall through the cracks as far as making sure that they meet the Title IV compliance things, and it's usually they're uncovered by a variety of factors. You mentioned Malibu. Well, that's a good example of some of the smaller cities don't have the expertise in their building departments to catch these. So lots of times it's complaints by other contractors or even by consumers as well. and people that are not pulling the correct permits, which is really defrauding the homeowner or the small business that is paying for these energy efficiency improvements to reduce their bills. So since the CEC have been involved in promulgating the regulations that were required, and the state license board is involved in some of the enforcement and working collaboratively with the local governments, there needs to be a renewed emphasis on how we can enforce these laws, because as the testimony showed, there's a real underground economy going forward that is defrauding legitimate contractors as well as the people who think they're paying for these higher quality services on energy efficiency. So it adds more people, sort of cops on the beat, if you will, in cracking down on.
So would the, and I apologize.
But this bill now
okay, I'm sorry.
is really primarily focused on the appliance piece of it. And the rest of it is an ongoing discussion with how to keep there was an MOU, but the collaboration between the state license board and the CEC, as well as local governments, to sort of flush out, if you will, enforcement of these unscrupulous contractors who are taking advantage of consumers.
And I apologize. I kind of like a number of people. I was bouncing between committees, so I missed the discussion.
So this bill had been amended, as you can see, by the no opposition to the bill at this time, to address some of the concerns I believe you were taking.
So would the CEC hire additional building inspectors?
Senator Wright, you were out of the room when we acknowledged the new direction of the bill.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's it. The CEC isn't directly
We're going to differentiate
in this.
here between the appliance enforcement piece versus the building enforcement piece. The appliance enforcement piece will remain
when you purchase an
CEC.
appliance.
That's making sure that the appliance is available for sale in California, meet the standards that have been set.
Okay.
On the building piece, your questions about inspections and compliance, etc., seems better placed at the contractual licensing board level. There's already programs underway there that ensure compliance. So it seems better to not only keep it there, but buttress existing collaborative efforts between the Energy Commission and the licensing board.
Okay.
So
Using the expertise of the Energy Commission to assist the state license board to meet the challenges that are out there.
Damn, I'm sorry. As a guy who played in building, I mean, the license board isn't coming to job sites. I mean, if there's a complaint that happens against a contractor, I mean, it would typically be because that contractor either failed to complete the job, and there might have been a forfeiture of a completion bond or a surety bond, or there may have been a series of other things. So in the appliance side, Mr. Chair, and I apologize because I'm sure that
that's fine.
It wasn't. Would we be kind of inspecting, say, Radio Shack to determine that a device that they were selling wasn't, say, marked as Energy Star, and in fact, I mean, where would the compliance take place? Would we be going into individuals' homes and saying, you've got a XY TV and that one ain't real, so we're going to snatch the TV off?
Senator Padilla,
and I'm not.
along with NRDC has been working with your staff, and particularly with the PUC and IOUs on this particular
No, it wouldn't
part
be
of
in
the
people's homes,
puzzle.
Senator Wright. I'd imagine it'd be somewhat at the retail, but mainly at the manufacturer level, just like it is now for the other appliances that are in the basket.
So
we can add on to that because that's.
So we would certify that an appliance that was supposed to have a consumption that would meet a standard at the manufacturing level, so that when it was okay, I got it.
So
yeah,
that they
that's correct.
So it wasn't false advertising as well as rebates given out that really didn't meet the intent.
Gotcha.
The requirement is for offered for sale, so it's at the distribution and point of sale level, essentially, not at the homeowner level for sure.
You measure twice and cut once. So, all right, I got it.
Any further questions or comments from committee? Senator Fulton.
I just want to say that I'm encouraged by how the bill is going and that it's moving and changing. I won't be on the bill today because it's a little nebulous for me to completely get my arms around. And while it would be great to have better control of air conditioning, particularly in my area,
Yes.
I'm not clear that we're there yet. But if when you finish the work in progress, perhaps I could join you. Thank you.
And not only that, but if the bill takes a significant turn in any other direction, then this committee will reserve the right to have the bill come back to this committee before going to the Senate floor for a vote.
I'll move the bill, Mr. Chair.
Senator Wright moves the bill. Let's call the roll. Did you want to say anything in closing?
No, just that we're going to be finalizing the amendments, working collaboratively with your staff and the sponsors of the bill, hopefully before the next committee, but certainly before it moves past that.
And also, to be abundantly clear, this bill is double referred.
Correct. That's part of our time constraint.
The motion is to do pass to EQ. Judicial, sorry. Please call the roll.
Padilla?
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Fuller? Fuller, no. Berryhill? Corbett? De Leon? DeSaulnier? DeSaulnier, aye. Pavley?
Aye.
Pavley, aye. Rubio? Rubio, aye. Semidian? Strickland? Wright? Wright, aye.
Okay. We'll put that on call. We need one more vote.
Yes, the first item, SB3.
Okay, and our next item will be SB3, Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, SB3 is now before you, which seeks to do three things. First, the bill would extend the sunset date of the already existing California High Cost Fund B program to January 1st, 2014. Second, this bill would require the PUC to require providers of telecommunications service using voice over Internet protocol to contribute to the state universal service programs. And third, the bill would require the PUC to report to the legislature no later than October 1st of 2012 on whether the proposed changes to FCC universal service regulations require conforming changes to state law. I want to underscore that the program reference here, the High Cost Fund B program, is not a new program. It's not a new assessment. It's merely the extension of a current program, which I believe is worthy, and most people on both sides of the aisle agree. It's a way that we are able to acquire resources to allow for the deployment of infrastructure and telecommunication service in hard-to-reach areas, hard-to-serve areas, in many cases, very rural areas of the state of California, under the fundamental policy belief that everybody deserves to be connected to phone service. As technology has changed, it's no longer just phone service that your phone line represents, but other telecommunications services in the 21st century. There's an amendment, technical correction suggested on page 3 of the analysis that I accept as an author's amendment. But with that, let me just close by saying at the federal level, the FCC is undergoing not just the release of last year's National Broadband Plan, but on an ongoing basis, acting to make specific plans to achieve our federal goals and objectives. And so therefore, the report back triggered by October 2012 will allow us to conform to any changes required or suggested at the federal level to universal service programs for us here in California. I would ask for your aye vote.
Do you have any witnesses?
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Bill Devine, and I represent AT&T. We're here to support the extension of this program. As Senator Padilla has commented on, this program was originally adopted in 1996. It's been extended 3 additional times, each time by overwhelming bipartisan votes. This program is one of those special programs that actually works. It works for your constituents, it works for the industry, and it's a real credit to the legislature and the PUC that this program has been so effective. In fact, it is so effective, California leads the nation in coverage of local telephone service, running above 95% today. So we urge you, and I vote for the bill. Thank you very much.
Rena Venturini on behalf of the California Communications Association, CalCom. We first would like to thank Senator Padilla for authoring this bill. It's an important program for our members that draw down on the B Fund. And as the Senator said, and Mr. Devine, it's important for all Californians to be able to connect to each other. And so we support the bill, and we also encourage our support. Thank you.
Good morning, Charlie Boring, Frontier Communications, and we support the bill, and we thank Senator Padilla for bringing this bill forward. We are a participant company in the High Cost Fund B, and we truly appreciate and support the concepts of universal service and maintaining affordable rates in high-cost areas. We do serve approximately 146,000 customers in California, many of which are in high-cost, hard-to-serve areas. So we see the value of this program and ask for your support. Thank you.
Members, do we have any questions for the panel? Okay. Some more support.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members. James Jack on behalf of CalTel. CalTel members do not collect from the B Fund, but with the addition of the VoIP language in the bill, we're very supportive of the legislative approach that Senator Padilla is contemplating. We've supported that approach with comments that we filed at the PUC in the current proceeding as well. We know we'll enjoy a collaborative process with Senator Padilla on this. And lastly, very supportive of the language that encourages coordination between the PUC and the FCC as we look towards revisiting universal service programs. Thank you.
Jeffrey Neal with the California State Association of Counties. Thank the Senator for introducing the bill. Also here in support.
Any other support?
Lenny Goldberg on behalf of TURN. We have always supported the High Cost Fund B program and strongly urge its continuation. We also think that VoIP providers ought to be assessed in this. We do have a significant concern, though, with regard to even the need for legislation which speaks to the VoIP question. VoIP will become universally used by major telephone carriers, and the jurisdictional this issue is being litigated at the PUC right now. The jurisdictional question we have is that if it is necessary for VoIP for anything having to do with VoIP to always come back to the legislature, that will significantly reduce the scope of PUC authority. Now, we appreciate the language that's in here that says this is not intended to enlarge or diminish other than the authority required. We actually think this authority, if this sets a precedent in terms of the authority issue, we think there's a big problem with consumer protection at the Public Utilities Commission, which will mean that every time an issue comes up with regard to major carriers that use VoIP, which is just another technique of transmission, that we will have a problem there.
Thank you.
Notwithstanding that, the High Cost Fund B has been always a major concern of ours for rural customers.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Any others from the audience? Would you like to close? I'm sorry, Senator Wright.
The support I have is probably a little different than that of other people because I'm working on a project later. The determination of what service you use shouldn't be based on the taxes that we place on it. So, I mean, in some instances, we have differentials where we tax this one greater, so you actually have government-induced movement to one service because you can bypass paying certain fees. So I like the idea that you have these costs and everybody who uses the service ought to contribute to the same fund, and that you shouldn't bypass the government fee by choosing a different technology that effectively does the same thing. So given that we have the high cost fund, been there for a long time, you shouldn't provide escape routes by statute to people having to pay. So everybody should contribute the same, and if you like the service, or if it's less expensive, it should be less expensive because it is, as opposed to the government created an additional cost for one versus the other. So I support the bill.
Senator Rubio, are you?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to thank the author representing a district that has many, many rural parts. It is incredibly important to the 16th district, so I'd like to move on the bill, Madam Chair.
Okay, would you like to close?
Sure. Just want to quickly comment on Mr. Goldberg's issue that he raised by calling members your attention to page 3 of the analysis under comment number 2. This will provide the CPUC explicit authority to require VoIP contribution and expressly states that this shall not be construed to enlarge or diminish any regulatory authority over VoIP service providers under existing law, thereby, as the analysis says, leaving open and taking no position on the question of whether a VoIP provider is a telephone corporation for any purpose, including being subject to service quality and customer service regulation. Some people have suggested, well, is this the beginning of maybe a slippery slope of regulating the Internet in its entirety? We don't think so. I think the language is crafted very narrowly, very specifically, in a targeted fashion to recognize the increasing presence of VoIP in our telecommunications or communications marketplace, but allowing people to continue to participate in the high cost fund B in the way that we've envisioned, in the way that continues to matter in many states, many parts of our state. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Okay, I know for my part, I also thank you for bringing this bill forward. Very helpful to our areas. With that, unless we have any other comments, if you call for the vote.
Padilla?
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Fuller?
Aye.
Fuller, aye. Berryhill?
Aye.
Berryhill, aye. Corbett? De Leon? Oh, Corbett, aye. De Leon? DeSaulnier?
Aye.
DeSaulnier, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Rubio?
Aye.
Rubio, aye. Semidian? Strickland?
Aye.
Strickland, aye. Wright?
Aye.
Wright, aye. Yes.
The bill is out.
We'll keep all of those on. De Leon, aye.
That almost dispenses with all the bills. We have them all on call. Let me issue a 5-minute warning to members of the committee who may be in other committees or in their offices to please return to 3191 as you will lift the calls in 4 to 5 minutes, one time and one time only. I believe all members have returned. Let's go ahead and lift the calls. Let's take it from the top.
SB 3, Padilla. Current vote 10-0. Chair and Vice Chair voting aye. Semidian? Semidian, aye. 11-0.
Okay, that is 11-0. That bill is out. Next item, please.
SB 37, Semidian. Current vote 5-2. Chair voting aye. Vice Chair voting no. Berryhill? No. Berryhill no. De Leon? Aye. De Leon aye. Pavley? Pavley aye. Rubio?
Aye.
Rubio aye.
Okay, that vote is 8-3. That bill is out. Item number 3, please.
SB 44, Corbett. Current vote 7-0. Both Chair and Vice Chair voting aye. Berryhill? Berryhill aye. De Leon? Aye. De Leon aye. Rubio?
Aye.
Rubio aye. Wright?
Aye.
Wright aye.
Okay, that is unanimous. That bill is out. Next item, please.
SB 216, Yee. Current vote 6-0. Both Chair and Vice Chair voting aye. Corbett?
Aye.
Corbett aye. De Leon? Aye. De Leon aye. DeSaulnier?
Aye.
DeSaulnier aye. Pavley? Pavley aye. Rubio?
Aye.
Rubio aye. 11-0.
Okay, that bill is unanimous as well and out. Next item, please.
SB 454, Pavley. Current vote 5-1. Chair voting aye. Vice Chair voting no. Berryhill?
No.
Berryhill no. Corbett?
Aye.
Corbett aye. De Leon?
Aye.
De Leon aye. Semidian? Semidian aye. Strickland?
Okay, that vote is 8-2. That bill is out. Next item, please.
SB 585, Kehoe. Current vote 8-0. Both Chair and Vice Chair voting aye. De Leon? De Leon aye. Rubio? Rubio aye. Wright? Wright no. 10-1.
Okay, that vote is 10-1. That bill is out. Next item, please.
SCR 6, Lowenthal. Current vote 4-2. Chair voting aye. Vice Chair voting no. Berryhill? No. Berryhill no. De Leon?
Aye.
De Leon aye. Pavley? Pavley aye. Rubio?
Aye.
Rubio aye. Wright?
Aye.
Wright aye.
Okay, that vote is 8-3. That bill is out. Next item, please.
Consent item SB 379, Fuller.
Well, there's the consent calendar is 2 items, items 9 and 10.
SB 379, Fuller, and SB 674, Padilla. De Leon? De Leon aye. DeSaulnier? DeSaulnier aye. Pavley? Pavley aye. Rubio?
Aye.
Rubio aye. Semidian? Semidian aye.
Okay, that vote is unanimous. Those bills are out. This concludes our hearing today. Thank you very much.